Season 3, Episode 9.
I mean, it's an incredible deck. It's beautiful. It's going to go in a portfolio somewhere because it's so beautiful. But you're like, I think this probably took until 10 p.m. for multiple nights. And I just don't want them to feel they need to do that.
I'm Pat.
And I'm James.
And this is UX Podcast, balancing business, technology, people, and society since 2011. And with listeners, new and old, all over the world, from Vietnam to Liechtenstein.
Now, this interview that's coming up, I recorded in front of a live audience at Hatch Conference in Berlin last autumn.
And I was not there. I was rather envious, but this was during the time that I was still on sick leave after my heart surgery last year.
I miss you too, Pat, being there. But why don't we just let me do the intro from the recording at the interview at Hatch?
Go for it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to UX Podcast at Hatch Conference. You've just got me, James Roy Lawson, here today. Normally I do UX Podcast together with Per Axbom, but sadly, I don't know if it's sadly, but he's just had a heart operation, which is a major bit of surgery. So he wasn't allowed to travel, and to be honest, he's not actually not fit enough to travel anyway, even if he wanted to. But he sends his love, and he would have loved to have been here as well. So I get to do this all by myself, which should be good and fun. Well, not all by myself. I have a guest. And for those of you that don't know Cal already, Cal Thompson is the VP of Product Design and Research at Headspace. They've been working with Headspace for almost 5 years now. Research. And Headspace, if you're not familiar with them, aims as an organization to provide every person with access to lifelong medical health support. They do that not only through the Headspace app, but also as an enterprise platform and a provider of mental health care services. Thank you for joining us, Cal.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Was the intro okay? Did I get it right?
Yeah. It's kind of like a new thing. And so I think especially for European listeners and users, they won't have experienced the care services because a lot of those offerings are for our US clients. But like most people know Headspace for the meditation and mindfulness and sleep and, focus music and that kind of stuff. But we just in the last couple of years started adding health coaches to our platform and therapists and psychiatrists because during pandemic, people started coming to us saying, I actually need more than meditation and mindfulness can give me, I love this and it's wonderful. And do you have anyone I could talk to? And so that's actually where that came from. It was a bunch of user research that we did on my team that identified a need for that. So all of that offering that you talked about at the end is relatively new for us. So we're still kind of figuring out how that scales globally, what it looks like in different languages. But, for our U.S. clients and U.S. headquartered B2B customers, that's now our
So going into the pandemic, it was a pure mindfulness app. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So all the other bits come after that.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, we were only, as we went into the pandemic, it was, what you all probably know of, Andy Puttycombe, amazing meditation teacher who had lived in a monastery for over 10 years and wanted to essentially make meditation something that was accessible to the West and actually something you could learn and that wasn't totally weird and totally woo-woo. And although it is a little woo and I like that too. But that was really kind of all we were known for. And then, of course, a lot of sleep support, those amazing meandering sleep stories that have no plot. So you fall asleep because there's no plot to hang on to. But then we realized, as pandemic kind of kept going and people were coming to us with basically larger levels of crisis that we needed to do more. So all of the offerings that are new are literally from the last 3-ish years. Yeah.
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 And Well, the idea was that I was going to ask you if we could start off with doing a bit of mindfulness,
Yes.
Which we aren't going to start off with now because we've already started. But I still think it'd be nice for us to have a moment of mindfulness. It's not something I practice, so I'm quite looking forward to doing this because it's outside of my normal zone and normal world. So. Yeah. Can you do that for us?
Yeah, so I'll give you a little introduction to this. So Dora Kamau is a newer teacher for Headspace. She's wonderful. She came from Vancouver, Canada, and has moved to LA to work at Headspace. This is a grounding exercise that she wrote, and it's only 2 minutes long. So even if you're like, I can't handle meditation, you'll be able to handle this because it's quite short. Okay. But it's a nice one for kind of getting a little bit more clear-headed, especially in a busy conference where you've been like full of ideas and talking to a million people. It's like a moment to just sort of breathe and settle in. So we'll test the audio. Hopefully it'll sound good.
Hi, this is Dora. Today, we'll be trying a grounding technique to help settle your mind and body and rediscover a sense of balance whenever you need it most. No matter what's going on around you, whether you're experiencing feelings of anxiety or racing thoughts, you can always take comfort with this visualization intended to help you feel more grounded and balanced in this moment. Start by placing your feet on the floor or sitting in a comfortable position. Take a cleansing breath in and out. Closing your eyes and feeling the weight of gravity, feeling the earth supporting you. Now, visualizing a strong, sturdy tree planted firmly into the ground. Its roots anchoring deep down into the earth and its elements. Leaves drifting away in the breeze. And just like those leaves, thoughts will always come and go. Feelings will always come and go. But from this anchored point of view, we can take a step back from those thoughts and see them from what they are, rather than what we expect them to be. By acknowledging them and letting them go, we're able to create a deeper connection with the mind while staying firmly rooted in the present moment and embracing all the different aspects of our lives. You can always come back to this whenever you need to reconnect to a sense of groundedness or reconnect with your environment and surroundings. Thank you for watching. Have a healthy, happy day.
Obviously, we were listening, not watching, but yeah.
Yeah, and that whole thing of coming back out of even though it's only a couple of minutes, I mean, you do. And now I'm speaking more quietly, right? I realised.
I
even though
always
it's
do
just been 2 minutes mindfulness. Well, I'm wondering though, how much do you use mindfulness internally at your organisation? Is it a tool that you make big use of?
Yeah, such a good question. So it started probably, I want to say 2015, 2016, that Andy and Rich are the co-founders of Headspace, asked one of my colleagues, Tom Freeman, to make our internal culture match the app, which was such a cool ask. It was like, how do you take everything that we offer to others and internalize that into the culture? And so what Tom did was he created a 10 a.m., this was like, pre-pandemic, so everyone's working in person together, a 10 a.m. meditation, just a 10-minute meditation that the entire company was invited to. And we had a mindful break on our calendar from 10 to 10:30 so that you could go.
So what size organization were you at that point?
I think we were 300 people.
All right.
Yeah. And this was all, we were larger, but this was like all the folks based in Santa Monica, which is where Rich and Andy moved the company to. But our New York and London and San Francisco offices had their own versions of it.
Right.
And then they had a 3 p.m. mindful break. And it was this recognition that we all need to take breaks or else our brains start to not only kind of overtax and whirl and atrophy, but you kind of lose focused thinking. You kind of you're plodding along. So we had this 3 p.m. break, and And we still do. It's all still in our calendars, I should say. But people would go on walks together. They would go on like a 10-minute walk and just totally, cut loose from work, talk to each other as humans, which was really lovely in tech. And just have this break. And what has changed is during pandemic, all that, of course, went digital, because then Headspace went remote. We're a fully remote first culture right now. It may change because we have a new CEO, so who knows? We're all kind of waiting to see what happens. But so the meditations went online, but then as people started to come back into the offices, we started doing a end of the day meditation together on Thursdays, and it's so lovely to end what is our working week, because we actually have a version of a 4-day work week at Headspace, which I'm happy to share more about, because I think it's pretty amazing. But to end our day with a 10-minute meditation where we're just all together, sitting in the office. Do you have any ways of measuring or how did you see the impact it had in the organization? I'm sure Tom could answer that. But I would say for me as a human participating in it, my impact was that I arrived at Headspace never having done eyes closed seated meditation. I had done different, kind of mindfulness trainings and stuff, but never proper, where you close your eyes and you sit and you're with other people kind of meditation. And for me as a participant, I was like, oh, this is so lovely. And it turns out my colleagues are human and they're not assholes. And I was like, oh, this is really great. So I think there's really something to be said for, for something like that.
If it turns all colleagues,
everyone on level footing like that.
So if it turns all colleagues from assholes into good ones, then it sounds like a killer move. Yes. But you mentioned there about going fully remote. You're now in charge of a fully remote design organization.
Exactly.
Is that plain sailing, or has that been a real challenge?
I would say it's a challenge. I don't know how, we have an audience here in person at Hatch. I don't know if you all are working remote or if you're working in person, but I think designers thrive on being together. There's a fair amount of creative energy that we get from each other, and when that is all through Figma and FigJam, and I think Jonathan DeFabry, who is my design research leader, said it really well. He said, "I don't know if I can handle another FigJam workshop. I don't know if I can do it." So I think we've managed. So here's how we do it, and I think hopefully this will be helpful to anyone who is navigating it. We have a few meetings that are on purpose super stupid. They are freewheeling, not work-related feeling meetings, but they aren't forced in this way that feels annoying.
Well, it's 9 o'clock, you have to turn up. Straight after your meditation, you're straight into a silly meeting.
No. So Grant Nickel, who's one of the design managers on my team, started this meeting called the Work That's Not Work in Progress meeting, which is... I had to write it down. It's WTNWWIP. But it has this super stupid, hilarious structure where it's coulda, gun it. And it is, for anyone who's not familiar with weird linguistics from the South in the U.S., because he's from Texas.
Right.
Coulda, gonna is I could have talked to you about this topic. I could have talked to you about this other topic I'm nerding out on. I'm going to talk to you about this topic. So every time we have this crazy meeting, 2 designers have to present like that. And they basically talk about things they're passionate about. And it's super silly and stupid, and everyone's in the Zoom chat, writing just goofy things. And it's a full slide deck. So there's a lot of visual inspiration. It's very rich, and they're showing videos and they're showing things and playing music. And so it really is more about who are you as a creative? Bring that. Don't worry about your corporate identity. Bring your weird, designer self that you don't get to be. To
bring in a bit more of the human, because
you're
detached from the human presence. Yeah. You're actually opening a door to allow them to bring that through digital into the space.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. And we have a lot of other meetings. We have a biweekly all hands that's a combo of education, share outs, and then also paired work time where I'll just put designers in breakout rooms and let them work with someone on another squad who they never work with. So they have that moment to riff with another designer and look at their work. And then we also have a weekly stand-up, which I'm sure you all have. I have a separate one for the product design team versus the research team. And then, of course, there's like, all sorts of ad hoc squad meetings. But I think like a fully remote design culture relies on having really good design managers. Like I have 3 really lovely design people managers who report to me, and their teams are really supported by them.
Yeah.
And then I have a wonderful research manager and she's a clinical research manager who's, supporting her team. So having that allows this, big distributed culture to actually live and not feel dry.
How many of the design organization were employed pre-pandemic?
Oh, good
as in basically what I'm asking there is, I presume you've got a whole load of them who are experienced with 5 days a week in the office, and you've got a whole load of people who maybe have never been in an office.
Yes, yeah. I'd say like a fifth of the team was here pre-pandemic, and then the rest, and probably 1/5 of the team is also a younger person who like came out of school during pandemic and was hired and hasn't ever worked in an office. Although some of them are now going into our San Francisco office just for that experience and like the mentorship they can get from other in-person designers.
Oh, that's really interesting, because I hear situations where organizations are basically forcing people in, like on a Wednesday, or I think in English there's been an expression called people who are twats. Sorry for the language there, but it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. So people that come in those 3 days of the week and be forced into the office for those.
Weird acronym, but yes, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's kind of you're meant to use that towards your team. But anyway, you've got the whole trust thing that I hear that people feel they can't always trust everyone. They don't know that they're working. They don't know they're doing the right thing. Do you have any kind of ways that how do you ensure the trust? How do you make sure you've got the confidence yourself in your team to let them be fully remote?
That's a good question. To be honest, I do fully trust them. I think if anything, I'm worried that they're working too much.
Right.
That's generally what I see happening, is that people don't have the kind of boundary of cutting off when they leave the office and leaving work at work and going home and being home. Like, I think especially for younger people who are working remote and who haven't worked in an office before, it's tempting to just work until 8 p.m., work until 9 p.m. And you're like, no, don't do that. We don't want you to do that. Like, you're going to get burned out. We don't want that. That's actually not in our values, and it's not helpful. Like, your work will suffer. So if anything, it's me trying to ensure that people, I fully trust them. You can tell from someone's work if they're doing the work or not. That's if anything, they're like too productive in some of the remote world, and
too productive.
I know it sounds weird.
No,
but it's
I
true.
think I know. Do you mean that they end up having too much to hand over to someone else? That kind of thing. You're too productive, as in you're putting too much down the line.
I would like an example of it would be, okay, so we're having a product check-in, which is like another type of meeting we have. I'm sure you all have similar ones where it's like it's a meeting where product eng design and sometimes our care leadership is reviewing in-progress design work or like a squad's design work. And the deck will become the most beautiful deck you've ever seen in your entire life. Right. And you're like, this is an internal meeting. We're just going through what's going to ship for this product squad. Like, we don't actually need, it's an incredible deck. It's beautiful. It's going to go in a portfolio somewhere because it's so beautiful. But you're like, I think this probably took until 10 p.m. for multiple nights. And I just don't want them to feel they need to do that. So if anything, it's... Yeah.
I was thinking suddenly the kind of like the crazy meeting from a few weeks ago when that person presented their passionate, skills, like interest in PowerPoint, then the penny drops and you realise, they're really nerding out. But does the mindfulness you have at the end of the day, is that a helpful tool for you to kind of bookend and say, look, mindfulness, we close the day and then that's the end of your work?
Yeah. What I find. And I don't know, any of you assembled here, if you've ever like sat down for a meditation, like I'll notice, especially because it's the end of the day, that I have a lot of like kind of anxiousness circulating in my body from just going back-to-back meetings and, just as part of my role. And I'll notice that after that 10 minutes that I'm like, everything's fine. It's like this sense of clean slate. And then I can go home kind of like, like if there was a stressful meeting or if something was confusing, which I'd say is more often the case, like something is undecided or confusing or swirly, I can let that go and you know.
And it would be an active decision to pick it up again, I guess, after you've had that session.
Yeah, then it becomes your own problem, you know. Then you're choosing to do that to yourself.
Yeah. So with Headspace, its flagship product is, of course, the app, and has been, like you said, for many years now. But it's a business. How do you manage the pressures that you presumably get about growth and engagement when you're working with mindfulness product?
Yeah, that's such a good question, and I especially want to talk about this because of where tech is at right now and how so many products are measured on DAO, like daily active users, you know, WOW, weekly active users, MAU, monthly active users. Like everyone is so keen on time spent in app, you know, and especially if you're an app. Ours is not at all based on ad revenue, thankfully, but, you know, any of the social media platforms are so keen on addicting you to those tools.
Oh yeah, and any of us that use LinkedIn at all, kind of half your feed is people complaining about what they need to do this week to make people engaged in their posts and make them like them, share them, whatever.
I know, exactly. So I think so. A couple of things, and for anyone who is working in, you know, an app, I would plead with you to try to measure your success by human success metrics or human outcomes metrics. We do measure daily active users. We do measure monthly active users. But in a product like Headspace, because a daily meditation practice actually helps you, like actually clinically reduces stress, clinically reduces anxiety, reduces depression, improves sleep, improves focus, there is a value to that. So when we are measuring it, we're thinking about it more in terms of, is this person getting the ideal health intervention to feel better? And we've done tons and tons of, you know, for over 10 years, Headspace has been running clinical trials on the app and different programs we have within the app to understand how it works and like what essentially quote unquote dosage of it produces measurable health outcomes. And so what we have found is 10 minutes of meditation 3 times a week is like that perfect sort of sweet spot to actually measurably reduce someone's stress. So those are the metrics we care about is, you know, is someone using it in a way that will improve their health? And for those who are doing coaching, therapy, et cetera, we also measure what they call full and partial response, which is if someone has a diagnosed mental health condition, and we have ways that we measure this through these validated scientific outcomes measures, we are looking at, is their depression going down? Is their anxiety going down? And this is like literally quantitative metrics that we're able to see about these users. And then we're able to measure whether that therapy was effective or that coaching was effective. So we're actually measured, you know, as a business on our ability to produce health outcomes, which is pretty lovely.
I'm just thinking, though, I mean, you make active use of gamification, as far as I've understood. And that, to me, opens up a door of, I mean, you're manipulating. I'm thinking about, I mean, I use Duolingo, like probably quite a few people do, but I don't use your app, sorry. But I'm sorry, maybe I will after this episode. But the whole gamification thing that's in Duolingo, and the way that they're constantly trying to trip you into taking up the subscription or taking the trial, and the trial then runs into a subscription. You know, there's anxiety increasing aspects to the way they are pushing their model. And, you know, ultimately, like I said, you're a business and you're going to have pressures to earn money, and you do use the gamification. How do you stop it being the kind of Duolingo, you know, oh, damn it, I've activated a trial side of things?
Yeah, we don't use those sort of tricky patterns. Not to say Duolingo is tricky, but, you know, we're pretty upfront about things. I would say, actually, we don't use gamification enough. Like we have pathways through the app, we have courses, we have all these things, but we actually don't, you know, we have yet to employ the really adorable thing that Duolingo is doing now with the like melting icon. Have any of you seen that?
I saw that today,
where, like,
yeah.
its face melts. Like,
yeah.
My wife was showing me her Duolingo app, and I was like, oh, wow, it's really mad at you. Like, there's something really wrong. And she's like, I haven't used it for over a week, you know, and it was like, you could palpable guilt.
Yeah.
So we don't do that because I think that would probably go against like the whole point. The entire purpose of the Headspace app is to make you feel better.
Melting Headspace app. Your head's melting.
Yeah. I mean, which might be accurate. We have had users tell us that one of the hardest things about using Headspace is oftentimes when you're most in crisis, you forget to use the app the most because you're the least level-headed. So you're not actually great at taking care of yourself. You're kind of, all over the place. And so that's something actually, like design-wise, I don't think we've fully unlocked yet. But it wouldn't be quite appropriate for us to to have the melting bird face.
No, but I'm fascinated though by that kind of the battle, I guess that must be going on with you want to grow the platform, you want to grow the subscribers, at the same time you do really want to deliver quality services for to improve people's health on the other side. And I'm fishing to find there must be some pressure internally that says, oh, can't you just do that to increase that?
No. So actually, the cool thing, and I don't know quite how much of this has hit Europe, but in the U.S., there's an increased move towards what's called value-based care, which is basically health insurance providers paying you if you deliver health outcomes for a user. We're incentivized to actually reduce members' stress. We call our users members, because there are health insurance providers in the U.S. who cover that. Because it's advantageous for them because stress reduction oftentimes has a strong correlation with chronic conditions and can actually reduce the symptoms of chronic conditions. And so there's a lot of it's aligned incentives. So I guess that's what I think what's very important and my kind of urgent ask to everyone in the tech community is figure out what those aligned incentives are and recognize that addiction to social media is not an aligned incentive, and it is causing teen mental health crises and a rise in plastic surgery amongst young women. It's just this bizarre world we've gotten into solely due to revenue, really looking for revenue. So I think that's...
I think just that point there about alignment is absolutely critical, because I feel that we often find ourselves in misaligned situations, and I think that's a cause of a lot of anxiety and frustration amongst the design community, that we do end up in that situation far too often and don't really know what to do about it. It sounds like that you've fallen into Headspace when they were already quite aligned or completely aligned with their mission and what you're trying to do. Yeah. But what if your organization isn't aligned? Do you just quit, or
Well, you can. I didn't not say that in my workshop yesterday that I led here at Hatch, because there are certain companies that aren't quite ready for some of the designers that work within them. I will say that Headspace wasn't perfectly great at measuring member benefit before the arrival of my boss, Leslie Witt, who is our chief design officer and chief product officer. She made a huge push for us to actually measure kind of member satisfaction with the app along with other product metrics. And so one of the things that happened, she and our former CEO, Cece, came from Intuit, and we have an Intuit alum here who worked with them. And they wanted us to implement the NPS. And they said, I know, it was very contentious. But I'll tell you how we did it, because it was a more human-centered way of doing it. So they wanted us to have, a member satisfaction metric that was something we could benchmark against other apps, So when we implemented it, we also added 2 open-end questions that are both optional. So someone gives their score, and then they answer an open end. And then a research analyst on my team would process all those open ends for themes. And instead of a transactional NPS where you do it right after subscription or right before churning or whatever, we did it at different moments in the user's journey, because Headspace as an app is meant to change you. It's a behavior change tool and a habit formation tool. So we wanted to know what's happening at meditation number 3, what's happening at meditation number 10, what's happening on someone's first sleep content use, what about when they use the letting go of stress course, managing anxiety course, the pro level courses, semi-guided, which is super, super advanced, where there's very little talking. And we wanted to actually see how are both the member requests that are coming in as part of those open ends changing through someone's journey, and like the level of member satisfaction across that journey. And then also kind of what do we need to like fix within the product? Like where are they kind of going to expose certain needs that we're not meeting? So it was actually a more human-centered metric.
Yeah. So those various points in the journey. I mean, did you do a lot of work into agreeing on which points it would be? Because that does sound like it potentially would be. We'll measure all the points.
Yeah, it's a good question. We had to work with the data analytics team and actually look holistically across the user base and say, like, what are the kind of big moments that are happening, and so where should we trigger surveys? And we have to carefully titrate it. So it's like to a percent of the users who hit that event, and if you get one of them, you don't get another one for a while.
Good, because that was going to be my next question.
Yeah, it's a delicate dance because you don't want to pester people. They're trying to fall asleep or they're trying to meditate, and you're like, hey, would you like to talk about our company? It's like, no.
Would you recommend me to a friend?
Yeah, I know. And the NPS question is so dry, and that was why we said it's important because you can benchmark it, but also we wanted some more data around it that was more, member-centric.
Yeah, it's way too... I'm not going to get into NPS. We've done an episode before about NPS, and it is so easy to game, and it's so wrong, and so many problems.
I'm like weirdly into it. I don't know.
You really are?
I think I like quant and qual together. That's
Absolutely.
really my vibe.
I love it too, but it's just what it sounds like though is that you've perhaps managed to implement NPS in a way which limits its susceptibility to being gamed by the people who want it to be good.
Yes.
It's like when I take my car to be serviced, it's the car manufacturer, when you go in at the service station, they've got a give us. It basically tells me to give them 10. I mean, it basically begs me to give them 10. It kind of ignores everything else because they know nothing else really matters to them. They've got to go for the 10s.
You have to click 2 things to get to the other score options.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're clicking wrong. Click 10, that's right. But that's so they're all gaming it. But no, a good balance. I mean, finding those quant and quant things to get married together is essential for getting a more true meaning from your metrics.
Well, and also I think designers aren't really motivated by quant metrics. Really, I don't think I think they're grounding. They're very clarifying. You're like, oh, okay, we have a 68 NPS. Okay, great. That's good. That's not terrible. But it's then they read the open ends and they're like, oh, what a nice story from that person. And they're like, wow, I kind of want to explore that a little more. And we talked about it actually in the workshop yesterday, which I think a couple of you were in. But I find that, design research, real generative research and real human stories are kind of the only thing that really inspires a designer to make something, because it's you have a clear portrait of that user in your head. And for me, at least when I was an IC, it was an embodied sense of what this person needs and how the pain that they were going through, and you just wanted to fix that. And so that's why, NPS is a very minor thing we do. We also do, of course, a lot of user interviews and diary studies where we're studying people over the course of 30 days. So we're actually seeing change occur, which is...
with an actual individual.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, we did a really good one, actually, that led to the therapy and counseling being added to the app. That was a 30-day diary study with 25 people. And it was their life in and outside of using the Headspace app. And they're taking pictures of their homes in context of where do you use the app, and draw what it looks like when you're stressed versus not stressed, and take a picture and send it in. And we sent photos of those artifacts to our C-suite to really give them the emotional feeling of that research. And it was powerful. And designers wanted to work on things that would change that because they could see that research, and they're like, oh my gosh, I want to help.
Yeah, it's easier to bring the empathy out from designers when they've got those kind of tangible artifacts to work on rather than a number.
Yes. Yeah.
Sadly.
Yeah. Who's excited about a number? I don't know.
I get a little bit excited sometimes.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
You're weird. I'm just kidding, James.
Well, you also work, you say end-to-end, meaning you go from research to delivery of it. But does your team also work kind of full width, if you know what I mean by that?
Ooh, tell me more. No, I don't know.
No, because like end-to-end is like, maybe you'd be talking about a particular part of a journey. It's like the full thing from researching it to delivering that feature or that bit of the journey. Whereas I guess what I mean by side to side is more the full experience. Because you said three.
Do you mean more like the service design?
Yeah.
Of it? Oh,
yeah. You've got three. You said three teams below you.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Because
four if you count the research team. Yeah, but yeah.
Because when I talk to and meet people from giant design organisations, there's a disconnect, not just between bits of the the organisation, the silos. Normally, there's even silos between design teams because you maybe got now I'm going to be a little bit silly, the button team. And the kind of the drop down team. When you get so big, you end up with that kind of scale of things.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by full width. That you've got the possibility to still touch all areas of the product.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say it extends into service design fully. To give a really concrete example of that, we were offering a consumer coaching offering, and it was a new offering, and the designers both built, the purchasing flows, the experience of the actual coaching session, but then they also ended up service designing the first coach session, and we ended up training the coaches in that structure. And they named it the discovery session, and they have all, kind of, here's the key beats that we want the coaches to hit with the members, the users coming in, because this is what they are expecting as they pay for this service. And so then that actually rolled out as training for the care team that was driven by the design team from our research. Because we ran and actually this is kind of a important role model I think to give folks. We ran a service prototype we hacked together DScout, which is kind of like user testing, to approximate the experience of a month of coaching with a coach. And so we were hacking together features in DScout for here's your text conversation, here's your video call, just throwing over a Zoom link. It was full shoestrings, duct tape situation. Yeah. But it was an approximation of what that user experience would be before we committed it all to final, product design and code. And so from that, we realized in that service prototype, this initial session is not actually kind of meeting the user's needs. So we're going to have to redesign it. And we did, and then trained the coaching team in it, which was, So yes, definitely full width. And so our team is also responsible for the tools, all the internal tools that our care providers use, which is a electronic medical record.
Right. Yeah. So if Headspace scales, would you look forward to a bigger design organization, or are you content with the size it is now?
I would look. That's a very philosophical question.
It's a bit of a loaded one, given what I've just kind of suggested, and I've tried to get out from you that it seems to be successful to have that full width, and the disconnect you get in larger organizations. So I'm kind of loading the question.
I'm not interested in the button team for sure. I am interested in, I think there is power in having a lot of different levels within your design team. Headspace has a very senior level design team. We have tons of seniors, leads. We have a few principals. We have design managers, design directors. I have a senior director on the team. So I would say it can be really powerful to have newer talent in the team. And like I said, it's only a fifth or less of the team is that newer talent. And I think that is there's something really special about having, folks who are newer to the profession on your team. So if anything, I would love to add more folks of that level, because then more senior designers get mentorship opportunities. Those designers are bringing fresh ideas out of college and, from Gen Z, and I'm, an ancient person, millennial. So, they have new concepts.
Only a millennial.
I'm an elder millennial, apparently.
Okay.
Anyway, so, but that's the only thing I think would be nice is that, I definitely don't want a button team. I do have a friend who is a designer at an unnamed large tech company in Silicon Valley who spent a week making a button for a modal and then was ready to put the text in, and they said, no, that's another team.
I've talked to someone who spent months working on the shade of button, I think it was, and wasn't even sure it ever got into production. I mean, it's crushing to kind of hear these kind of stories from people, and they, for me anyway, kind of it gives strength to my hypothesis that there is an optimal size to digital organizations, and I think when we're seeing companies like Headspace who are not hundreds of thousands of employees, compared to other tech giants, which are, you can compete and you can do a good job and you can have satisfied employees while going on that journey to do it. So I personally think we do have as kind of a ceiling to size.
What's your viewpoint on like ideal size? Now I'm very curious.
Now you're interviewing me.
You've interviewed so many people that I'm sure you have a viewpoint on this.
Well, I've interviewed a lot of people, but also I've spent 20 years working as a consultant.
True.
So I've worked in lots of different sizes of organizations. And one thing I generally would say is once you reach a size of organization where you have internal functions, so you've reached maybe 20-odd people, then you might employ a HR person, for example. Then you're starting to get distance from your original vision, the thing that made you start the company. Once you get up towards the 100 mark, then you're going to have multiple internal resources. And so you're going to have a collection of people who are disconnected from the customer, disconnected from whatever service or whatever frontline thing you're doing. So the problem, there's no kind of magic, this is a line in the sand, it's now chaos. It's more, you get up to the few hundred mark, you're clearly going to have disconnect. And then once you get to the thousands, you're guaranteed disconnect, so you're going to spend more and more of your energy moving boxes around, having meetings about meetings to kind of like try and work out new strategies, change process management, all these kind of things start kicking in when you get to a certain size, and you're no longer working with the thing that gave you the passion in the beginning to start the company.
That makes sense. Yeah. Also, it makes sense because like 100 people is kind of the amount that most people can know, can remember their faces and know them. So, it stands to reason that going past that kind of becomes a bit too much.
Yeah.
So our team is 25. So it's like a nice, I feel like I know everyone well. They all have great managers that they're connected to. Like it just feels, And
I think looping back to what we said about working remotely or not, then again, I think the size of the organization comes into play even more now. That if you've maintained your organization to a slightly slimmer, smaller size, then I think you can achieve what we talked about, maintaining that human connection to the people in your team as well.
Yeah. I will say that I want to work in person at this point because I'm such an in-person person. And, to what I was saying earlier around, like, I do feel like some young people are like working too much. And I want to like help curb that, which maybe sounds weird as a leader, but I do. I just think like our lives are so precious, and we should not just be on computers all day long. It's not great for us. So I think I like an in-person culture. I just think there's some magic that happens amongst designers when we're like drawing together on a wall and.
Yeah, I think you're right. That there is a degree of it, and I hope you have the possibility to arrange in-person things with your team going forward.
Yeah.
I think we have to finish now before we get actually thrown out. So thank you very much for being here today, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you, Cal.
Thank you, James.
So I did really enjoy this interview, James. It was huge fun listening back to one that I wasn't part of and realizing how much I know exactly where you are coming from when you were asking the questions and how you were responding. But also, Cal did a fantastic job of answering all these questions and made it all seem like the way they work is actually the way I would want to work in a company like that. the goofy meetings, people can express themselves and be who they are. It's not around company values, but it's about who you are as a person. I love that way of seeing it, seeing everyone as an individual, but also being able to share that in an open environment.
Yeah.
And you actually also pulled out the fact that so many of the people on the team have never worked in an office. That kind of blew my mind. I was really open-eyed of you to realize that.
That was really interesting because Cal had been talking really enthusiastically about the way they'd worked and the way they built up the teams and culture and so on, and using the phrases like pre-pandemic and so on. So yeah, that shift when you come to a different space, when you've got now people in your team who have never worked in the office. Right. That kind of is mind-blowing when you reach that realization. And how you deal with it. And I agree with you. I did have a very warm feeling of like, this genuinely human-centered, caring, wanting to really make a difference and caring about the same things. Measuring the right values and living the values. You got lots of good vibes.
Yeah, and I was
Cal.
pretty amazed at Cal saying that they thought that some people were too productive. In the sense that people working at home, they don't shut off the computer when they should. There's no, like, this line between being at work and at home isn't there as you're working remotely. And so you have to be really attentive to when people do work too much.
Yeah. Looping back to what you said about the goofy meetings, or when they have two designers talking about things they're passionate about, I really like that as well, because the whole thing of allowing people to geek out and allowing people to share what they're geeky about. I mean, me and you, we've interviewed many geeks over the years. If you want to use that label for it, but people who are passionate about their thing, and when you get to talk about the thing you're passionate about, you glow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you really do kind of like shine, and allowing people to do this in the workspace as a sidetrack does allow people to express themselves in a way which they perhaps can't in other contexts. So you get to know them and see them genuinely.
And I'm going to end on an observation that kind of, it didn't blow my mind, but it was like when Cal said, when you are most in crisis is when you need the app the most, but also that's also when you forget to use the app. That was a really cool design issue that they brought up. I know you have a suggestion for us, James, on what to listen to next.
Yeah, I mean, given that me and Cal did start talking about NPS, I tried really hard not to get too deeply into my dislike of NPS, but we did a little bit. I think it would be good for you to dive even deeper into the world of NPS and some of its issues. And that you can do by listening to episode 179, recorded back in 2018, pre-pandemic, with Jared Spool.
That's a good one. And that is one of the times during the interview that I realized, James really wants to say something now, but he really can't.
I'll make up for it by suggesting this episode instead. You can listen to that.
Remember to keep moving.
See you on the other side. Okay, Pau. Why is coffee so mindful?
I don't know, James. Why is coffee so mindful?
It's always grounded.
Ooh, love that.